I'm always a little nervous when I'm on the receiving end, though. I like to be the host.
Yeah, well, today I'm the host, man. And what's up, everyone? Hey, speaking of hosting, I get to host Mike Cameron today. I'm excited as heck that Mike is here. Drew Dudley said, hey, you know who's really cool is Mike Cameron. And guess what? Mike Cameron's here today. So Mike is a passionate family man. He's an entrepreneur, a speaker, and a writer. He's also the CEO and managing partner of Axiom Mortgage. Mike is a big proponent of lifelong learning, which I totally love. And he always believes that there's something to be taken away from every experience. Now, when his girlfriend was murdered by an ex-boyfriend in 2015, he took a keen interest in domestic violence prevention and specifically in redefining what it means to be a badass, which we're going to talk about today. Mike runs his business and tries to live his life by the three tenets of passion, pride, and purpose. And I am just delighted as heck to have Mike with me here today. How you doing, Mike?
I am doing fantastic, Phil. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I'm turning the tables on you, brother. It's me and you just having a chat, though. You know, we're going to see some folks are going to join and have questions, and we're just going to have a conversation, man. So first, holy balls, though. You lost your ex-girlfriend, man. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, life changed a little bit back then, and it's one of those things you just can't predict, and it's one of those things that you can't prepare for. And when these things happen, you've got choices to make, and I've always talked about embracing the suck. As an endurance athlete, that's one of the things that you have to learn to do. It's at some point, when you're running a 50 mile or 100-mile race or do an Ironman or whatever, at some point in the race, it's going to suck. There's just no amount of preparation or no amount of training that you can do that's going to get you to avoid that suck. You have to sort of train to embrace it. And when Colleen was murdered, I had to take that concept to a whole new level. And I could have curled up into a little ball and shriveled up and withered away, or I could take what happened and use that as an opportunity to grow.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed, inspired, and encouraged that you took as an opportunity to grow, man. And so many would just curl up. So the fact that you didn't says a lot about you, man. So tell me about this whole concept of redefining a badass, because that sounds so sexy. And I'm going to guess you're probably going to let me down here, man, and tell me, well, it's really not. But maybe not. So talk to us about redefining badass, Mike.
Well, it was interesting because so one of the presentations I give, which you and I talked about a little bit, the brand of me, I was doing it for a bunch of mortgage brokers, and Colleen was helping me put together the proposal for this particular conference. And she said, you know what, you should call it badass brokering. And I kind of went, I'm not so sure. These guys are a little more conservative. And she said, look, part of your presentation is about being authentic. You need to submit it. So I did. So I submitted the proposal with the title Badass Brokering. And the event organizer emailed me back within about 5 minutes and said, oh my God, this is the best title we've seen so far. I can't tell you got the gig, but I'm pretty sure you got the gig. And Colleen used to always tease me about how badass I was, doing Ironman, running a business, being a yogi, rock climber, ice climber, all these kinds of things. And as a guy that's always been more sort of geek than jock, it really sort of secretly made my heart swell with pride when she'd do that. And in 2015, we went to Penticton, British Columbia, Canada, where I was competing in the Challenge Penticton, which is an iron distance triathlon. And my Aunt Sharon happened to live there. So after the race, we ended up going over to my aunt's place for dinner. And we're sitting there, and she starts telling us this story. And you have to understand, my Aunt Sharon was, I think, 65 years old at the time, not overly active, not overly fit, maybe even a little overweight. And she starts telling us this story. She said, I decided that I wanted to get a little bit more active this year, a little more fit. So I signed up for the 5K fun run leading up to this Challenge Penticton. And she goes, I knew full well I was going to be dead last, but I didn't care. And I lined up at the back of the pack. And she starts telling us this story. And she says, I get about a kilometer away from the finish line. And all of a sudden, this kid on a bike starts riding beside me. So she says, I looked over at him. I said, you're here because I'm last, aren't you? And he says, yep, I'm afraid so. But you're doing great. You're doing great. And he starts cheering her in. And, she finishes telling us this story. She says, I'm about 200 meters away and this kid on the bike is still riding with her. He says, okay. He looks up. He says, I'm going to ride ahead and let him know you're coming in. So she looks up and she can see that they've already started pulling down the finish line. They've already started packing up the PA system. And, she's just feeling like, oh. So he rides ahead and they set everything back up to their credit. And so she goes across and finishes. And she finishes telling us this story. And she gets up to clear the table and goes into the kitchen. And Colleen just looks at me and she says, you know what, Mike? She goes, now that's fucking badass. And it really got me thinking at the time. And on the drive home from Penticton, which is about a 10.5-hour drive. So Colleen and I talked a lot about, what does it really mean to be a badass in the context of today's world? And then that was August 20th. It was October 2nd. She left my house and went to teach yoga, and unfortunately never made it to yoga. An ex-boyfriend ambushed her, shot her, and killed himself. And in the context of what happened to her, that really, that sort of brought this whole redefining badass. This is a guy that fancied himself a badass. He was a bit of a bodybuilder guy, sort of your stereotypical badass. And so as a sales professional, I've always looked at the impact that emotion has on human behavior and the decisions we make. You're a sales guy, so you get it, right? Our customers buy on emotion justified by logic. So I've studied the impact that emotion has on human behavior for 25 years as a business owner and a sales guy. And so, when I looked at it in this context, after Colleen was killed, I had a lot of people come up to me and they wanted me to rally against the justice system, which surely failed her. She had a restraining order. She'd done all the right things. But for me, it just, that was akin to putting a Band-Aid on a ruptured jugular. And I started looking at, so how do we actually prevent guys like this from existing in the first place? And for me, it started at the time with my boy now is 17. But, for me, it starts at home. When I look at him and his behavior and talking about being able to embrace your emotions, being able to have really just permission to feel. And I've given this type of talk all across North America now, in the context of healthy relationships. And, without fail, I have people come up to me afterwards and, you can see they're visibly relieved. And what's become evident is men everywhere are really just looking for somebody to give them permission to feel. And I think in a society, we're starting to see more and more of that conversation take place. But, traditionally in a society where as men, we don't cry, we're suck it up, don't be a pussy, that kind of thing. And just when we realize that we do make decisions based on emotion, if we never have the opportunity to explore our emotions, if we don't understand the underlying emotions that drive the decisions we make, we have zero chance of living a fully awakened existence. And it's just, it's challenging.
Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah, that's quite a redefinition from someone who is just hardcore, like musclehead being, or maybe the outdoorsman, right? That's shooting a rifle and foraging for food and berries, to a real badass, which is someone who has a full range of emotions, not just anger and happiness, and who feels love and feels things and embraces the suck, right? Mm-hmm. Who embraces the crappiness that sometimes happens. That's pretty badass too, man. Absolutely.
Well, and that's the thing, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to be seen, some pretty amazing things can happen. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And like I said, just some of the conversations I've had after giving this kind of talk. So, again, in a professional context, I talk a lot about sales and leadership. But after this happened, my focus diverted a little bit, and I started having more conversations around healthy relationships. Because, again, part of my framework for sales is telling stories. And, obviously, and sadly, Colleen's story is a powerful one. It's not an experience I'd wish upon my worst enemy, but it's an experience that I've been given, and I've got a choice. I can squander it, or I can do something with it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a great reminder for all of us, right? Whatever happens to us, it's up to us to decide how we respond and how we react to that. And we can embrace it as a good thing, or we can hold it close and make us turtle up and really go deep inside ourselves. So, Mike, what are some of those coping mechanisms that you used to help you embrace that? And how do you use that now in sales and being CEO of a mortgage company?
Well, again, just understanding that things are going to suck at some point, and there's nothing you can do to avoid that. I think for me that's sort of key. And again, for me, the physical fitness piece is a big one. So I ran my first 100-mile trail race in July here in Southern Alberta, and doing things like that just helps cope. I try. I'm a little bit off my game with my yoga, just because I've been training hard for some of these bigger races I've been doing. But for me, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, those are some of the tools that I use, and understanding that everything is temporary, especially emotions, right? Emotions are fleeting. And this is a guy, Paul Jacob, the man that murdered her, was a guy that made a decision with very permanent consequences based on a very temporary emotion. So recognizing when those emotions come up, that they're temporary, they're fleeting. And sometimes you just got to ride them out. And, I think for me, actually fully expressing or experiencing whatever it is I'm feeling, is important as well. So, again, some of the standard stuff, the physical fitness stuff, I like to run, yoga, those things for sure. Surrounding yourself with people that get it. And this is one of the things I talk about a lot. When you're in a crisis mode, surround yourself with people that get it and forgive the ones that don't, because, honestly, and this kind of blew me away too. I mean, some people just don't get it, and it's not necessarily their fault. But you don't need to hang out with them. You talked about Drew earlier, and Drew actually came out for a visit the Sunday. So Colleen was killed on Friday. Drew and I had scheduled to have dinner on that Sunday. He happened to be coming to my town, and so he'd reached out and said, Jesus, man, do you still want to do this? I said, yeah, absolutely, I do. So we got together, and we had a great meal together, and Drew's a good friend. And as we were leaving, he gave me a big hug and said, keep it together, man. And I just looked at him. I shook my head. I said, nope. I said, I'm going home and I'm going to lose my shit. And he said, don't confuse the two. He says, sometimes to keep it together, you got to lose your shit. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's good advice, right? Sometimes to keep it together, we got to lose our shit. That's so true, man. Sometimes we have to kind of let go in order to embrace. And that's a good reminder to all of us to do that and to really kind of, let it rip, if you will. Let it go, man. So cool. So talk to me about this whole fitness thing. I mean, as a fellow sales guy, right? I'm doing my best to get back in shape. The only shape I am right now is kind of round, so I'm looking to be a little more angular, if you will. So what are you doing how do you train for one of these mega events, man? I mean, is it just something you've done since you were 2 inches tall or what?
No, that was kind of, I started maybe 5 years. Actually, it was 5 years ago. I did my first Ironman, and that was, I know that because it came up as a memory on Facebook saying
Awesome.
5 years ago. It was actually just last weekend that was the anniversary. So no, it's only been in recent years. And for me, it's the 5 a.m. starts. That's kind of the key, the crux of it is getting up early, getting stuff done. There's all kinds of conversation about, the morning miracle stuff, the 5 a.m. club. I think it's Robin Sharma who talks about that. I'm a big believer in getting stuff done. Again, if I can get up at 5 and get my workouts in, even if they're fairly long workouts, by 7 or 8 a.m., I've already accomplished more than most people have. And that just sets a really good tone for your day.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm finding that too. I mean, lately my goal has been to get out there and do 2 to 4 miles in the morning. But if I don't get out the door by 7 o'clock, the day is like, holy crap, I got to do stuff. So that's good advice on how to do that. Evenings often end up sneaking up too. And then it's like, it's too dark, it's too wet, it's too this, I'm too tired, I got too many excuses. But I do, whether it's 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning,
absolutely,
whenever you can start the day off with some exercise, I find that it's definitely helpful. And it makes me a whole lot more creative, which is really a nice side effect. Not only do I have more energy, but I also have more creativity because my brain's firing more.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I hadn't really made that connection, but I'm a guy that 5 years ago would have told you I don't have a creative bone in my body. But I host a podcast, I've written a book, I've gotten into filmmaking lately. Just hobby stuff. Documenting some of my run journeys and things, and it's just, you're right. I think that fitness piece certainly links it all together. Yeah.
Cool. So talk to me about the mortgage business in Canada. I mean, that's different, man. Does every home close with free poutine, or how does this work, Mike?
Yeah, free poutine for everybody. Yeah, we're a little bit different than you guys down in the States. We've got termed mortgages. We've had all kinds of rule changes. We're all scared of what happened in the States in 2008. And, so our regulators look at us very closely and think they're going to be proactive and tweak this dial and tweak that dial and make changes. And it makes life a little bit challenging for us at times. And, we've gone through a fairly significant round of changes lately, but, it's no matter the business, we all sell the same thing, right? We all sell trust. And, when we're looking at the mortgage business, your mortgage is really probably the second largest purchase you're ever going to make. Your home, if you ask somebody what the biggest purchase, they'll probably tell you their home. If you ask them what the second is, they'll probably tell you their car. But the reality is, if you take a mortgage and amortize it over 25 years, the interest you pay on that product, because it is a product, is going to be way more expensive than your car. And, back in the day when we had 40-year amortizations and we could do 100% financing, you would have paid more for that mortgage than you would have for your house. If you'd carried it all out.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't matter the product or service. We all sell the same thing, and that's trust. So, we talk a lot about sort of building that. I'm a big proponent of building a framework for sales rather than this is how you do things. Because you know what, Phil, you could tell me all your trade secrets, but I'm never going to be Phil. And just like, you're never going to be Mike Cameron. So I can tell you everything I know. And if you try and execute it like I execute it, maybe it'll work for you, but maybe it won't.
Yeah. Well, it probably won't, because our personalities are different, right? The way we do things is different. Even though we check the box, intellectually, it's not the same, man. We definitely are wired different. So Mike, if you've got a team that works with you, right, to do mortgages and stuff. So what's some of the advice that you give your new salespeople, your new mortgage people, as they're working with you to help them be effective as quickly as possible?
Well, I think the number one piece of advice, and my guys are probably sick of hearing this, is you want to do more business, talk to more people. And it's as simple as that. And you know, it seems simple, but in this day and age of social media, everybody thinks they're connected, but nobody talks anymore. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is just talk to more people. And the beauty of social media is now you've got an opportunity to make connections that you wouldn't have otherwise made. I mean, look at you and I having this conversation. I mean, this would not have happened 5-10 years ago for sure. But you know, I look at things like LinkedIn, and pretty much anybody that connects with me on LinkedIn that's a relevant business connection, I pick up the phone and I call them. It's now a warm call. It's no longer a cold call. You connected with me on LinkedIn, you're going to take my phone call. And don't get me wrong, I don't advise phoning people up from LinkedIn and starting to pitch them stuff. But you know, hey Phil, how you doing? It's Mike Cameron. We just connected on LinkedIn. It's great to connect with you. Tell me a little bit about your business. Boom. And then chances are you're going to reciprocate. And if there's a potential win-win there, then maybe we do business. But, you know, again, it's all about talking to people. And then, you know, within that, I talk about a framework, and that's just ask questions, tell stories, and be authentic.
Ooh, that's good. Ask questions, tell stories, be authentic. Boy, that seems pretty simple yet. Mike, I gotta ask, man, like, how is business?
Business is up and down. Like I said, we've had a lot of rule changes lately. So everything that we did last year is twice as hard to do this year. But again, it opens up opportunity for areas of expertise. So things are a little bit more confusing up here than they were a year ago now, which is not a bad thing for an expert, right? Because now the consumer needs the expert more than they ever have. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. We're looking for more insight, not more information. So important, and such a great distinction there, that if we can, you know, ask the question, tell relevant stories, right? Don't just tell stories, because I can tell you about my grandma. You know, her bunions are horrible, but that's not going to convince anybody to buy a house.
Yes.
Right. So
agreed.
That's, you know, and the authentic, I think, is good. I think, you know, really important. I would also like to add just one little shift on authenticity, and that is be vulnerable as well. Like, when you don't know the answer, it's okay to not know the answer. Yes. Just find the answer, right? So say, you know what, great question, not sure right now, but I'll get that for you. Can I get that to you tomorrow, in an hour, 2 weeks, or do I need to find it right now? Because I can pick up the phone and I can find that answer for you, but I just don't have it in my head, and I don't want to lie to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when you talk about relevant stories, you're absolutely correct. That's, you know, this comes back to the science and the art of sales. And one of the things I love is I love marrying the two of them. So when I look at the science of storytelling, I don't know if you're familiar with Professor Yuri Hassan. I believe it was Princeton University. He did a study where he hooked up a fMRI to a storyteller and a listener, and he coined a term called neurocoupling. So when I tell you a story, yours and my brainwaves start to match and mirror. So there's actually science that connects. You are going to feel more connected to me when I share a story with you. So there's some science behind it, and as you said, there's an art to it, because I don't want to listen to you drone on about your grandmother's bunions for hours on end. But what I tell guys in any sales profession, find the 5 or 6 or 10 things that you're always trying to convey to your customers, find a story to wrap those in, and use that over and over again. I mean, I've for probably 17 years now, I've taught homeowner workshops, affordable housing homeowner workshops, and I talk about paying down your mortgage faster. And one of the stories I tell is when I first bought my new home, I was a bit of a nut job. I wanted to get rid of my mortgage as quick as possible. So I looked around the house. What do we have that we can get rid of that we don't need? So, you know, we had a water cooler that we were paying $20 a month for, or $25 a month for. And I walked over to the tap, I lifted up the tap, and guess what? Water came out. And I looked at my wife at the time and I said, yeah, no. Let's call these guys up. Let's get rid of this thing. And so we got rid of the water cooler. I phoned up the bank. I said, okay, crank up my mortgage payments by $25. And, you know, so little by little, but it's hilarious because I run into people at the grocery store, you know, 5 years later, and hey, you're the water cooler guy, right? So they remember the story. I mean, they remember the point of the story, but if I just told them the point, they probably wouldn't remember it.
Yeah. Great example. Great suggestion too, to think about the questions your customers ask and then develop your stories around that instead of just making up stories about grandma's bunions. Really,
Yes.
really good, man. So cool. So Mike, so if you're to give us one more piece of advice, life or work or both, what would it be?
Do what you love, man. Or
Yeah.
find what you love in what you do. One or the other.
Ooh.
Because that's well, because it's sort of cliche. Oh, do what you love. Everybody do what you love. And I think too many people are searching outside for what they love, when truth be told, you can probably find something you love in what you do right now. And that just makes, because I mean, let's face it, if what I love is climbing mountains, chances are I'm probably not going to make a living climbing mountains. But maybe I can find something within what I do right now that I love, and focus on that, and it sort of makes that so much more tolerable, bearable, and enjoyable. So rather than focusing on I hate this about my job, I hate that about my job, while you work towards whatever it is you want to work towards, find something in what you're doing right now that you love, because chances are there's something.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great last word there, Mike. Find the love in what you do. It makes so much sense. There's got to be some love, folks. Embrace that emotion. Mike talked about embracing the suck, redefining badass, and how to sell. A nice sales framework of asking questions, telling stories, and be authentic. If you want more from my friend Mike Cameron, check out MikeCameron.ca. He's Canadian, no free poutine on the site, but lots of awesome insights about redefining badass and about going deeper, finding what you're passionate about, and how you can find the love in what you do. Mike, this was great, man. Thanks so much for spending some of your day with me, dude.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So such fun, so inspiring, and so instructive. All right. So until next time, folks, check out MikeCameron.ca. Tune in for another episode of Conversation with Phil.